How to connect to an MPC server for Gemini CLI, or indeed this would work for any of your CLI tools. MPC servers, that's Model Context Protocol, provide AI agents with useful and up-to-date data by providing them a safe way to fetch real current information rather than being stuck with their old or outdated training data. Now, I'm going to presume that you already know what model context protocols are. If not, you wouldn't have come here. And Gemini CLI is the AI agent released by Google. I'm also going to assume that you have got your Gemini CLI installed. We're going to run through running it, but I presume you've got it installed. Okay, we are going to install two MCP servers. One of them is going to use an API key. The other one will not require an API key. First things is you do have to open up your profile settings.json. Now I'm on a Windows platform, and to do that, here is the command that I am going to type into my command prompt. If you're on a Mac, you're going to use this command. Okay, so I'm on a Windows. This is the command that I'm going to need to run it. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to go into my command prompt. If you're on a Windows platform, to go into your command prompt, simply click on the Windows key and then select command prompt. Okay, and then you should have this box pop up. You could use PowerShell also, but I prefer command prompt. It's much less complicated. Okay, and inside here, I paste in Notepad. Notice that it's %, user profile %. That's going to get your profile folder for you automatically in case you don't know where it is. Okay, and then /.gemini, because you need to go into the Gemini folder, and inside there is where you're going to get your settings.json. Okay, now here is my settings.json, and you can see that I have already got my MPC server settings put into the file. Now, when you open up yours, you will probably look like this. Okay, just that bit. You won't have these comment tags. I've added those, and these might be in a different order. So you might just have this first one, theme default at the very top. That simply tells you what default settings you're using. Your settings.json would have been created when you installed Gemini.cli. And depending on what things you selected when you started it, this would have been written into your file. In my case, just to go over a few of these, that's telling me that I use the default settings. This is telling me that I'm using my Gmail to log in. This is telling me that I'm using Visual Studio Code as my editor, and so on. Okay, so that's where yours will probably end. And you probably won't have this comma sign there. You won't have that. Okay, so here's what you need to do. Put a comma there to let this file know that things are going to be continued. Then here is the new piece of text you need to enter in. Everything from here down to here. Okay? That's just a comment tag. Okay? This MPC server is very important. So that curly bracket there actually closes here. They come in pairs. Okay? And then for my context 7, which starts there, it ends there. Notice there's a comma there. Now I have commented out my API key. You will need to get your own API key. You go to context7.com to get your API key. I'll bring that up on the screen later on so you can pause the video and go there. This is going to give me access to the Microsoft Writing Style Guide, and that would help me when I'm doing writing, if you're doing a lot of writing. Okay, so you can pause this video at this point and notice how these are written in. Now, if you've got a different MPC server, simply go to where you are getting your MPC server from and look what code they're asking you to use. And then you put the code into your settings.json, which is probably the main thing that you are looking for. Now, here I have not put my key in here, but I'm going to put my API key in there. That's where you put in your API key for your context 7. If you're doing programming, you probably will need the context 7 MCP server. Okay, let's come back into Visual Studio Code. So we've done that, we've put them in there. I can leave this just for a few seconds on the screen because that is exactly what you are looking at now. So everything from your line 35 all the way down to your line 55 is what you need. Okay, now the Context 7 MPC server, as I told you, I give you the references for those. It's going to give you up-to-date version-specific documentation and code examples straight from the source. So if you're using things like PHP, Node.js, or things like that, you need Context 7 because then you're not just relying on Gemini CLI to make up the code for you. You can ask it to go to the resource and it will get the most up-to-date information. When Gemini was built, it only has limited information. This gives it the most up-to-date information. Okay, so let's have an example of this. If you've got all of this installed, here's how you run it. Okay, that's what we want. I'm going to copy this. Notice it's --MPC context 7, and then you ask your question. So now I am going to now open up my Gemini, and I'm going to do this within my Visual Studio Code here. So here I've gone to my terminal. Okay, I simply clicked on View Terminal, and I want to use command prompt. It's much easier rather than using PowerShell. Let's start Gemini. And there we are. That's going to take a few moments to kick in. There it is. It's already loading my credentials. And there we are. We are now loaded. And you can see I've got 2 MCP servers running. If your servers are running, it should show you there. Let's see. If you do /MCP and list, and that should tell you what MCP servers are running. Now here you see I've got my Context 7 and the tools under it, and I've got my Learn and the tools under it. So let's have it run with MCP Context 7. Let's have a run of that. And notice what I'm asking here. What is the most secure way to connect to a MySQL database with PHP 8.3? So this helps you a lot if you know what version of software your server is running. You can very specifically ask your Gemini CLI to write code specific to the version that you're using if you have got something like Context 7. So this is what makes MCP servers very, very useful indeed. And so here I'm asking it what is the safest way to connect to a database, to a database using 8.3, and you see it's already come back. And let's just come up and see what's said here. Connecting to a MySQL database securely in PHP 8.3 requires blah blah blah. Okay, it says using PDO, prepared statements, encrypt your connections. Now I could now go on further on and ask it to help me write some code using that. So I'm no longer going to be getting old code. I'm going to be getting the most up-to-date version of the code. I would say Context 7 is an MCP server that every programmer should have. And then again, if you are doing writing and a lot of writing documentation, then that is where the Microsoft server comes in. And let me show you the prompt for that. Yes, the Microsoft Learn MCP. That gives you access to the Microsoft writing style guide. Okay, and there you have got a link. Oh, that's a link to the Microsoft Writing Style Guide for Visual Studio Code, which is fine. If you go there, it would also give you a link to their GitHub accounts, which will give you everything that you require, the kind of code you need to put into your, the lines of code you need to put into your settings.json, which you've already seen here. There's no need for a registration key, so the same one that I've showed you here would work. And let's see an example here. Okay, here I'm going to use the MCP Learn. That's how you call the Microsoft Writing Style Guide. That's what I'm referring to. The Microsoft Writing Style Guide is part of the Microsoft Learn MCP server. And here I'm going to say, what does Microsoft Writing Style Guide say about length of sentences and use of technical words when writing papers? Okay, so I'm going to take that and I'm going to run that here. Now, Obviously, when you've got these servers, you won't just use them for asking questions. You can actually use them to check your writing. So when I'm writing and I've written my document, I will ask it to check what I've written against the Microsoft writing style guide, and I would simply put in my command like that. So it would be MCP learn, and I will say check the open document against this against the Microsoft writing style guide, and it will use that to make corrections or to proofread it. So now here it's going on to connect, which it has done. You can see it's pulling out information, it's refining its search, it's investigating this style guide, and now it's giving me some feedback back. And there we are. So if I were to scroll up here, you can see based on the Microsoft Writing Style Guide and related documentation, here are the key guidelines regarding sentence length and blah, 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 blah. It goes on to say all of those. So these two MCP servers are the two that I think most people would need. If you're a programmer, you need the context 7 so that you can, when you're writing code, you ask it write code using, and make sure you call up the MCP context 7 and tell it what version you want it to use. If you want it to use good practice, which you should, tell it to use good practice, recommended approach. And if you're doing a lot of writing, then simply tell it to proofread your document using the Microsoft Writing Style Guide. And if you've got MCP servers installed, that should be a breeze. Okay, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe, and I'll bring another one out later. Thank you.